So, hello and welcome. Another episode of Yves Just Chatting, and I have Sasha with me. And there was a bit of an announcement this weekend, which kind of surprised us as well. Came a bit, I mean, that it would be coming was clear, but was a bit of a surprise. It started, I think, on Thursday or something when we were still
end
in
of
tech
last week.
classes. First requests from media came in where people asked, like, do you know who's bought it? It seems to be final and stuff like that. And in the end, then I think Saturday, Reuters was the first one to finally, or not finally, but at least say that they are very certain that in the end user computing has been sold off to KKR. So seems like VMware or Broadcom finally is splitting up the company and actually getting where they want to be. They pre-announced it already in Barcelona during the EUC session that would be coming. To be honest, talking to analysts since over a year, we had already, there was, I think, in the first discussions I had with Broadcom, or not with Broadcom, but with analysts, I think mid 23, something like that, or end of 22, somewhere like that. The first people came as like, who's going to buy the EUC space? So it was very clear that this was going to happen. So that was not really a surprise. That it was that fast was, I think, a bit of a surprise now. I mean, we knew they were talking to people, but yeah, I think it's overall very surprising at the moment.
Yeah, but I think it's good. So we know who is the new owner of the EUC part. So it's very good for the partners and also for the customers. So the EUC part go and can go their way, can create a new partner program, can create a new ecosystem. And for the customer, they can figure out if this is the right way to go on. But there are many open questions currently, and we hope to get the answers in the next few weeks, because big questions are what happens with the licenses.
Yeah, so I mean, it's one thing is what happens with the licenses, and I think explicitly what you are referring to is the big question is like, how are customers going to deal with the combined licenses? So
Yes.
if you're actually utilizing Horizon on top of a vSphere infrastructure, I remember I did the interview with L 1 or 2 weeks back, which is also published on my channel, around the future of the end user computing business unit and everything else. And we had talks last year in November in Barcelona. And it is always said they have a solution for it. But no one really comes out with a solution. Is it a complete VCF stack? Do you get vCen with it? Do you get NSX with it? Is it just vSphere? So there is a lot of questions from that perspective, which is important for customers as they make their investment and future investments for VCF on how this is going to continue. But there is also, I mean, we are dealing a lot in the service provider space. There is also not that many, but there is a good amount of service providers also running Horizon and desktop as a service solution and things like that. And they more or less have the same situation, or even worse. They were now told that the CSP licenses are going to be running 1 month longer than on the other VMware program. So it's not end of March, it's end of April. But that's just another 4 weeks giving people, and does not necessarily solve it. And again, even there, when I asked in the last couple of days, how am I going to report then combined usage? And everybody says, like, we don't know.
Yeah, and that's one topic. And the other topic for the service providers is also, how does the integration looks in the next years? So we saw it with HDAS. There were, not so much news come out in the last years, but everyone talked about there will be a new version with integration in Cloud Director and so on.
And by the way, important point, as we see more and more viewers on the different platforms actually join in, if you have any questions to any of these topics around the end user computing integration, what does it mean for you as a customer? What does it mean to actually work with this platform? if you have any questions, drop them in the different channels they should actually pop up for us here, and then we can try to get them answered for you if we know the answers for them. So we were in the midst of the HDAS discussion. You said that there is a bit of a challenge at the moment for service providers as HDAS. There were announcements, then nothing in the end came. The last couple of years, then all of a sudden it said it's like it might be more like the Horizon or similar to the Horizon on Azure platform, which is going to be used. So I think it's overall the most important part for customers is now there is more certainty behind it, because in reality is if you work with a product from a business unit where the current owner basically told you is like, hey, I'm going to sell that part off anyway, then it's great if someone tells you it's like, hey, I have an 8 years roadmap and I have all of these scenarios. But then in reality, on the other side, you then figure out it's like, yeah, but someone needs to pay for that 8-year roadmap. There is development efforts and stuff like that.
And that's the point. And when we're talking about it, it's so from the VMware perspective currently a little bit, because how does the integrations will be look in the future with the integrations in the VMware portfolio? So in the vSphere or VCF portfolio, as you mentioned before, also in Cloud Director portfolio. But we also have many customers with Horizon on Azure.
We have customers with Horizon on Azure, which will definitely have questions about how that's going to continue. We have and do not forget about the whole Workspace ONE scenario on top of it. So the biggest scary scenario for a lot of customers has been over the last couple of months is like, what is the future for Workspace ONE? Because if I'm running an enterprise and I have potentially 25, 50,000 devices being managed by Workspace ONE, it's very important for me to have a clear understanding on what the future looks like from a device management perspective. Will I be able to continue to work on that? And I heard several times in the last couple of weeks where customers said, it's like, hey, this is too unsafe for me at the moment. I'm going to switch over to an alternate platform. And I think having a new owner is definitely going to help this. And we do not necessarily, when we look at the owner and speak about KKR for a second, KKR is not necessarily known for being one of these quick turnovers, just splitting companies up and distributing the bits and pieces out of it into different corporations. So from that perspective, I think it's a good new home. Yeah. To be realistic for me, the price, I would argue is, for me, 3.6 billion would still be a hell lot of money, or 3.8, I'm not sure, 3.6 to 3.8 doesn't matter, 200 million up and down, who cares? But I think overall, I expected the price to be higher. I heard rumors before that people said it's like they want to have 15 billion, where I said it's like, okay, that's a tough pill to swallow, considering that the overall VMware buyout was 68 or 62. So 15 would have been potentially a lot. But 3.6 or 3.8 is also, from my perspective, very low, considering that at least from the numbers we heard, is that business unit is doing about 1 billion in annual run rate. So that's just 3.8 years.
Yeah, and thinking about that, what does it mean for the end user market or for the future for the end user market?
That's exactly a good point. It's like this also gives us a bit of an idea on the evaluation of the overall market, because what we learned from the Reuters article, and again, we don't know if it's true, but at least Reuters clearly wrote that it was an auction. Yeah. And if it was an auction, that meant basically different companies could just bid. So then there are multiple scenarios. One of the scenarios could be that there were just not enough bidders, and based on that, no one actually went to a very high price. The other part could be a silent bidding process, and everybody was basically pokering that no one else would actually get a higher price. Or it is currently the evaluation of the market, which then is also pretty critical for everybody to understand that there seems to be an issue in this market. So overall, it's going to be interesting. I'm not expecting in the next couple of days or weeks that we get any, let's say, message from from KKR, which is reliable, because every company, when you buy something, you always say is like, yeah, we are going to invest into development, we are building up new support, new sales organization, we see a massive growth of the company. No one comes into buying a company and actually says it's like, yeah, I'm just going to bleed this out until we have enough money, and then we are going to sell it off to the next one. So that's going to be interesting. But I think looking at it and looking at larger customers, and I mean, you work in the enterprise field as well, is do you think that this is giving customers more confidence to stay with the VMware end user computing space?
I think that will become very interesting in the next weeks. So how does the new vendor, how does the end user computing team of VMware, or currently still VMware, works with the customers, bring out informations, starts the communication with customers, with the partners, bring a new partner program. Also, what happens with the license prices?
I think that's an important part. I mean, what El said in the video, it seems like that they are considering that everything stays stable, but the question is, how long does it stay stable? On the other side, is like, if I'm already betting that the market potentially is not that high, because if I'm just actually setting up that relatively low sales price or that relatively low buying price for the shares, then I could say is like, okay, this is either a company where I massively need to invest into R&D, so to make it profitable. That could be one reason. The other reason is I'm expecting that there is a declining demand. A declining demand typically is not the best to react on a declining demand is by raising prices ridiculously high, especially as it's a very price-sensitive market. We see this especially with the very, very large accounts we have, where the large accounts very often tell us is like, we are very price sensitive. We are calculating the price down per application, per desktop, and this is really where people say it's like, each VDI can cost us amount XYZ. Each application is allowed to cost us amount XYZ. So it's a very price-sensitive mark, and every little bit you are changing in there is putting you up on the list that people are going to reevaluate.
Yeah, but I see it really in a good position currently for the future. So if they will do a good job, have a good communication with partners and customers, they have many opportunities in the market. If they, starting with their roadmap, it looks fantastic. And so there are many options.
Yeah. So there is one question which came just up. Will Horizon still work on VMware ESXi? So based on the talk and the chat session which I had with El, and you might want to actually go through my podcast or my video library and just go back and look for the EUC video, which was, I think, episode 20 or 21 on my podcast and video stream. There was an interview which I did with the end user computing business unit. And based on that, they said it's like, clearly it will still work on the VMware ESXi platform as it currently stands, and it will continue to be hosted there. I would actually see it from a customer perspective a bit different, because the advantage you get out of being owned by an independent vendor now is that beside ESXi, which is already integrated, so it would not necessarily make sense to remove that part. But beside ESXi, you also now have the opportunity, which technically was always possible, to utilize other platforms as a hypervisor and also other clouds. So it gives you much more flexibility into this whole stack. And I think that could actually be a game changer for them as well, and open up new markets on the other side, because depending on how the combined licensing might look like, it might also be attractive for customers to revisit. It's like, hey, am I going to run my VDIs on a Hyper-V platform? Am I going to run my VDIs in a public cloud scenario or something like that? So while I'm pretty confident that at least for the next couple of years, you will still be running the ESXi scenario, I would expect that there will be more platforms.
Yeah.
But I would say it's like, if they were to rip out ESXi, that would basically be a complete desk command for themselves.
Yeah, I think that will kill Horizon in the current position.
So speaking about that, I think it's also important to know, or one of the questions which the next couple of weeks have to show is there is this deep integration into ES6i when it comes to the way on how they can provision desktops on the VDI platform. So I think it's going to be interesting to watch if and how that integration is going to continue, because a lot of the advantages for certain desktop VDI infrastructures with VMware was the fact that they could actually get specific feature sets. Was it the old link clone feature or other features which allowed them to make modifications and specific behaviors? And I think that's going to be interesting. A, can they get new features into that? And B, will Broadcom continue to support them? Because, I mean, link clones, they have 2 or 3 other products which utilize link clones. ARIA Automation uses it. Cloud Director uses it. So the link clone piece should be stable. But everything else, I think, is going to be interesting.
Yeah, and also, how was the integration after updates, after API changes, or will be after the upgrades and API changes? And what about new features maybe coming in the next years on the vSphere side or the VCF side? How can we integrate it? How can we integrate security? But that's future points we need to take a look. What will be changed by the new vendor?
Another interesting topic is how are we going to deal with the security aspect of it. One of the arguments for VMware, and I know not every customer has used it, but one of the arguments from VMware in the past has been that you could utilize the guest introspection and other features from ES6i combined with NSX, which in the early days did not require an NSX license. Then there was an interim solution where you could just actually continue to use NSX but didn't have to license it just for that feature. But that's going to be a question how that is going to run. The other approach which VMware then had was the carbon black scenario. And at least according to what we know, carbon black is still on the sellout. There were other rumors, but I'm not going to constant that one. Toby from our team just mentioned instant clone. Instant clone, for example, is a feature which is just being used by VDI as far as I know at the moment. No, and Tanzu, doesn't Tanzu use it as well for something?
No, they roll out new every time.
But yeah, so the security aspect is going to be interesting depending on where Carbon Black ends up. That could be an interesting story. I mean, I know from our customers, the majority were not necessarily using VMware integrations for antivirus, etc. So they will not be affected. But again, it was a security feature always up for discussion.
Yeah.
So the other thing is going to be let's maybe pivot a bit from the Horizon space over to the Workspace ONE space. To be fair, there was never really that deep integration into any VMware products. There were several attempts to get the identity management or other things integrated. But overall, it's going to be, I think, an interesting plot on what's going to happen to Workspace ONE. Will they expand it? Will they keep it as is? Because it's a very cost-intensive solution, because you constantly need to update it with the newest devices, newest OS versions, and everything else. And that is still a high-risk scenario where a lot of customers told me in the past couple of weeks is like, what's the future going to look like? Should we already consider switching away? And so that's, I think, going to be interesting.
And there are a lot of rumors so that Workspace ONE will be only available as a cloud solution in the future. Other ones told us, yeah, there will be an on-prem solution, but yeah, we need to figure out what is the way here and what is the new vendor have planned with it. So maybe they split the 2 products completely, Horizon and Workspace ONE. Maybe they will combine it more than they have done it. Nobody knows.
Toby's bringing up an interesting question. I mean, it's clear. We see this on everywhere in the VMware space. Competition is telling customers to get off the platform to get to XYZ or whatever other vendor replace it with. The question is, how quick is the end user computing business unit able to spin up all of these scenarios? So the question from Toby, again, on the different vendors and different platforms. I mean, clearly, if I'm a competitor of VMware, I had 18 months this time. I'm honestly, in some areas, really surprised how unprepared some of the vendors are really running their marketing campaigns. Some of it is like, I would have expected on November 22nd, like that basically hell would break loose and every competitor would basically jump up and down and actually do whatever they can to create a hell lot of noise. But it's, I mean, yes, there are door-to-door campaigns where they really contact customers and call them. But when we look at social media platforms, even search engines, etc., some of them haven't even taken up the attempt to hijack other people's search keywords and things like that. So they seem to be very calm. But the reality is, on the other side, is like when we look at VMware EUC, let's stick with the VDI platform. It's like, what do we have? We have Citrix, and to be honest,
we have a lot of Microsoft stuff.
And that is potentially if I just put my CEO hat from Comdivision on it, if I would have to take a decision now and actually really challenge whether we continue to use Horizon VDI, then I would most likely not migrate from a Horizon VDI into a Citrix scenario, because I'm basically moving myself from scenario A into scenario B, where I also don't know what the future is going to look like. Because from all I hear again and again and again, we are not a Citrix user. I don't know that many Citrix users, so that I cannot really judge it. We have a few customers who run it, but we don't manage it. So it's very hard always to really get a feeling about it. But they also seem to be struggling and not necessarily very happy or anything else. So the big question in the end is going to be, what does this really mean? What is my alternative? And you mentioned already Microsoft. I think if I'm a company owner, most likely, if I really would want to step away from it, then most likely Microsoft would be my first choice, because
and AWS. So also AWS started in the end user computing market and want to bring it up in the next year or in this year more and more. So that's also maybe a very good solution, because they are running a lot of Microsoft services also on AWS.
Yeah, but I mean, considering it, it's like it's still going to be Microsoft as a vendor, but just running on an AWS platform.
That's right.
Yes, they are going to add a few pieces here and there and put some spices on top of it. But in the end, it's going to be still a Microsoft platform, just on a different vendor. So from that perspective, I think it's not like picking between VMware and Citrix. It's really like it's Microsoft, and now I'm picking which vendor, which platform am I going to use it? Am I going to use it on-prem? I think that's unrealistic. I mean, Azure Stack would allow me that to a certain degree, but the question is, would I really want to run VDI in the current environment on-prem? Then we are talking about public cloud infrastructure. When we talk about public cloud infrastructure, we are talking about either Azure or AWS. I'm not sure if Google has anything trustworthy with Microsoft platform. For sure, you can run all of this on a Linux desktop. But that's also the point where I would question is like, are you then really still running applications? Because you would be down majority to Java applications and native.
That's a good point. So when we are talking about what's about Google, and Google goes, from my perspective, more the other way, going with web applications.
Yeah, but I mean, let's face it. I started 1996 Comdivision. And when we started off with standard web hosting on the one hand side, but we very soon started doing web application development. Because back then everybody was saying it's like everything needs to be a web application. In 5 years' time, everything is a web application. We are now over 25 years later, and I would say we are now currently getting to the point that people really start utilizing more and more web applications. We just go through that on ourselves, changing a legacy ERP system with a web-based ERP system. And I already got complaints from our accounting people. It's like, yeah, but it's much slower. If we tap through the field, it has delays in it. I mean, yes, if you have real accountants, then a web UI might actually become a problem, because some of them are really tapping to scenarios. But when you look at all of this, that's really a question for me, is we get more and more web application, more and more companies are switching to SaaS applications, which in the majority of the cases are web applications as well. So the big question is, how long will we still need it? I mean, when we look at legacy Germany, I would say at least the next 20 years. But there are other territories out there where companies are a bit more modern from the, it's a bit harsh, but yeah. Germany is definitely one of the perfect scenarios of running old legacy applications until they really do not work.
But maybe let's split it up in different business units. So we have a lot of business units in the enterprise. They can run most of the applications web-based. So the complete Office, so Outlook works really good as a web application. Teams works really good as a web application. So there are more and more web applications available.
I mean, in reality, I would even argue a majority of the Office suite is like a lot of people in the companies do not necessarily need Excel anymore. A lot of people in the companies do no longer need Word anymore. Yeah, right. Those are two tools which are in many cases completely obsolete, because the primary reason why in the past an enterprise gave everybody a Word license was because they were needed to write letters. Who writes letters anymore? It's like majority of things is emails. Yes, there are a few exceptions, but and yes, Excel spreadsheets are there, but more and more companies are utilizing more and more BI, where we had these monster spreadsheets before, where you actually, is like, if anyone breaks a link, we are lost. And Toby just says it's the year of the VDI again and again and again and again and again. No, but I think that's exactly the point. It's like we have been talking for so many years about that finally VDI is growing, and for sure the pandemic has clearly given it VDI another kick. But I also had the feeling that once the pandemic was kind of over, or at least a bit more in a getting back into a normal work scenario after 1 or 2 years, either companies had established a new VDI system, or they figured out how else they can just continue to work with their current platform as usual. So the question really is like, when is finally the year of the VDI? If the pandemic, if what we achieved in the pandemic was not good enough to actually get everybody there, the question is, will it get any better? And again, also a question to our audience is like, if you have any opinions on that, please use the chat feature or the message feature and drop in your messages or questions or comments so that we can actually answer them or try to answer them.
Yeah, and I think the many use cases for VDI in different business units. So it's a real good solution. We can bring in some more security than working with the Fed clients.
But also on the other side, that's also what's happening. Is like you have customers who are actually moving back to the legacy Fed client. As they say, it's like, we only have a handful of applications left. Everything else is a web application. Managing some applications on a client is going to be tedious. We don't want to have that. So we are just going to go back to Fed clients. In most cases, the notebooks, because I mean, it's getting more and more difficult to really get physical computers, desktop computers. I mean, you get them, but they are typically for very specific use cases. So it comes back to notebooks, and even there, it's going to be interesting what people are going to use, because there is more and more demand for people where they actually say, it's like, yeah, but I would want to have a MacBook over a Windows notebook. I mean, there is the opposite scenario as well, but there is also freedom of choice. And if I have MacBooks, then again, I have my problem with my old legacy applications in many cases. But yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting scenario, interesting to see how all of the integrations are going to continue to run. I think it's really the most important part, which we are going to look out in the next couple of weeks, is what exactly are they going to do from a hybrid license model perspective. Is like, which licenses are going to be included in the Horizon stack in the future? Which features can you use? How is support going to be managed? Is this more like an OEM deal in the end? Because I think that would be the easiest solution for Broadcom to solve it. I'm not sure if the end user computing people would like it, but it's more or less, it could be something like just an OEM deal where they just say, it's like, hey, you can just utilize this. You utilize it by concurrent users or whatever else, and then you pay us XYZ for it, and then you need to do first and second level support, and we will take over then level 3 and 4. like they did in the past with most of the OEM vendors. So that would clearly be an option. But again, this is, I think, one of the most important questions for a lot of customers moving forward. Then the license pricing, as you said, is like, will there be a price increase? Will there be a change? I asked already L on the call the other day, is like, can we see, please, a massive decrease in different SKUs? So whilst I know a lot of people are not necessarily happy with the Broadcom VMware approach, where Broadcom just actually with the change in the licensing, massively reduced the potential choice scenarios for a lot of people. But on the other side, I must say, it's like, I like it if I can actually just work with 40, 50 SKUs and not actually have every little product in every combination in a 5-pack, 10-pack, 25-pack, whatsoever. It's like, have a decent price and a decent discount schema. That would at least be the one and big advice that I would give to KKR, as like, streamline the licenses as quick as possible.
Yeah.
Good. If there are no other questions, then for now, then I think we have covered everything we have for now. If there are any other questions, please let us know. We are going to try in the next couple of days to meet up with some of the end user computing people in Palo Alto, but that's going to be a few more days out up until we move from, not so sunny Texas. We still hope that it gets a bit better, to Palo Alto. And then we are going to try to hook up with the team over there from VMware end user computing and try to get and try to see if we can get them in front of a camera. They might have a complete media blocking, but if they are able to get in front of a camera, we are definitely going to try to do an interview with Shankir or someone else. So if there are no other questions, if there are, I'm going to give you a few more seconds to put them into one of the chat windows, and then we can try to answer them. And otherwise, we are going to drop out for the session and go to have lunch here in the US. And yeah, in an hour. Okay, yeah. It's too early still. Yep. And then we will keep you posted with everything which is going to happen. We are pretty sure we are going to do 1 or 2 more live sessions in the next couple of days where we just discuss about all the news we figure out on our way through the US, when we talk to customers, when we speak to VMware and everybody else, and keep you posted on the way. By the way, not so much end-user computing related, but we will also start a new live format on Thursday, which is going to be the VCF Musketeers. So that is going to be started by Tobias Paschek and myself, and we are going to help discuss VCF architecture from minute 1 to the current version. We are going to run this as a live stream. So we are going to have live demos. We are going to live go through the different systems. So if you want to actually join that, that's going to be hosted primarily on Twitch, twitch.tv/VCF Musketeers. And you also find links on our different social media platforms. So if you want to join that, do that as always. And then we need to go. So Jens just dropped in with a message. It's the year of the desktop as a service, or apps to be precisely. Yeah, whether it's the year of the VDI or the year of the desktop as a service, I think that's exactly where we need to see what the licensing and everything is going to bring.
Yeah, so the VMware or the end user computing team of VMware or the new vendor, have everything in the hand. They have every opportunities. Let's see what they make out of it.
Question is, how is it going to be called? Is it going to be called VMware? Do they buy the name as well?
I don't think so.
But it seems like that Broadcom doesn't necessarily care that much about the name VMware, so
I think it will
Let's start some new rumors.
I think it will stay Horizon.
Yeah, Horizon and Workspace ONE. Maybe they bring the good old AirWatch back.
Maybe.
We will see. Nevertheless, no more questions so far. And then we hope the best for it. We try to get Shankir and others in front of the camera in the next couple of days. We try to get others in front of the camera and actually keep you posted for everything we know. We'll hear around desktop as a service, VDI, etc. And then we will see where it goes from here. For everything else around cloud service providers and stuff like that, Sasha and I will cover that as well. And see you on one of the next live streams. Follow us on all the social media platforms. See you then. Have a good day. Good.